Good evening, grizzly bears. Or good morning, good afternoon, or good night. Whatever time it is for you. For me, it's a rainy Tuesday evening. Rainy and a little cold. Today is the last gasp of winter before spring truly arrives. So, we're going to continue today reading poems by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. We're a little more than halfway through his poems. I would say not quite 2/3 of the way. The next poem on the list is called A Ballad of the French Fleet, dated October 1746. A fleet with flags arrayed sailed from the port of Brest, and the admiral's ship displayed the signal, steer southwest. For this, Admiral Danville had sworn by cross and crown to ravage with fire and steel our helpless Boston town. There were rumors in the street, in the houses there was fear of the coming of the fleet and the danger hovering near. And while from mouth to mouth spread the tidings of dismay, I stood in the Old South, saying humbly, "Let us pray." O Lord, we would not advise, but if in thy providence a tempest should arise to drive the French fleet hence, and scatter it far and wide, or sink it in the sea, we should be satisfied, and thine the glory be. This was the prayer I made, for my soul was all on flame. And even as I prayed, the answering tempest came. It came with a mighty power, shaking the windows and walls, and tolling the bell in the tower, as it tolls at funerals. The lightning suddenly unsheathed its flaming sword, and I cried, "Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord." The heavens were black with cloud, the sea was white with hail, and ever more fierce and loud blew the October gale. The fleet it overtook, and the broad sails in the van, like the tents of Cushan shook, or the curtains of Midian. Down on the reeling decks crashed the o'erwhelming seas. Ah, never were there wrecks so pitiful as these. Like a potter's vessel broke the great ships of the line. They were carried away as a smoke, or sank like lead in the brine. O Lord, before thy path they vanished and ceased to be, when thou didst walk in wrath with thine horses through the sea. Next up, we have a poem called The Leap of Rushan Beg. And I can just tell this poem's going to be rough to read because it has a lot of names in it. Arabic names, I think. And I'm just going to give it my best shot. Mounted on Kairat, strong and fleet, his chestnut steed with 4 white feet, Rushan Beg, called Koruglau, son of the road and bandit chief, seeking refuge and relief, up the mountain pathway flew. Such was Kairat's wondrous speed, yet never yet could any steed reach the dust cloud in his course. More than maiden, more than wife, more than gold and next to life, Rushan the robber loved his horse. In the land that lies beyond, Erzurum and Trebizond, garden-girt his fortress stood, plundered Khan or Caravan, journeying north from Kurdistan, gave him wealth and wine and food. 740 men-at-arms his livery wore, did his bidding night and day. Now through regions all unknown he was wandering, lost, alone, seeking without guide his way. Suddenly the pathway ends, sheer the precipice descends. Loud the torrent roars unseen. 30 feet from side to side yawns the chasm. On air must ride he who crosses this ravine. Following close in his pursuit, at the precipice's foot, Rayhan, the Arab of Orpha, halted with his 100 men, shouting upward from the glen, La ilaha illa Allah. Gently, Rushan Beg caressed Kairat's forehead, neck, and breast, kissed him upon both his eyes, sang to him in his wild way, as upon the topmost spray sings a bird before it flies. O my Kairat, O my steed, round and slender as a reed, carry me this peril through. Satin housings shall be thine, shoes of gold, O Kairat mine, O thou soul of Kuruglau. Soft thy skin as silken skein, soft as women's hair thy mane, tender are thine eyes and true. All thy hoofs like ivory shine, polished bright, O life of mine, leap and rescue Kuruglau. Kairat, then, the strong and fleet, drew together his 4 white feet, paused a moment on the verge, measured with his eye the space, and into the air's embrace leaped as leaps the ocean surge. As the ocean surge o'er sand bears a swimmer safe to land, Kairat safe his rider bore, rattling down the deep abyss, fragments of the precipice rolled like pebbles on a shore. Rushan's tasseled cap of red trampled not upon his head. Careless sat he, and upright. Neither hand nor bridle shook, nor his head he turned to look, as he galloped out of sight. Flash of harness in the air, seen a moment like the glare of a sword drawn from its sheath. Thus the phantom horseman passed, and the shadow that he cast leaped the cataract underneath. Rayhan the Arab held his breath while this vision of life and death passed above him. Allahu, cried he, in all Kurdistan lives there not so brave a man as this robber, Guruglau. Next up we have a poem called Harun al-Rashid. One day, Harun al-Rashid read a book wherein the poet said, "Where are the kings and where the rest of those who once the world possessed? They're gone with all their pomp and show. They're gone the way that thou shalt go. O thou who choosest for thy share the world and what the world calls fair, take all that it can give or lend, but know that death is at the end." Harun al-Rashid bowed his head. Tears fell upon the page he read. It's a very uncharacteristic poem for Longfellow. It's short, for one. Longfellow rarely writes short poems. And it's pessimistic. Most of his poems are quite optimistic or inspirational. This one is more on the depressing side. And it also has a little bit of mystery to it, I feel, which is also something missing from most of Longfellow's poems. I think all of those things make me like it more. Next up we have King Trisanku. Viswamitra, the magician, by his spells and incantations, up to India's realms Elysian, raised Trisanku, king of nations. Indra and the gods offended hurled him downward, and descending in the air he hung suspended, with these equal powers contending. Thus, by aspirations lifted, by misgivings downward driven, human hearts are tossed and drifted, midway between earth and heaven. wraith in the mist. On the green little isle of Inchkenneth, who is it that walks by the shore, so gay with his Highland blue bonnet, so brave with his targe and claymore? His form is the form of a giant, but his face wears an aspect of pain. Can this be the Laird of Inchkenneth? Can this be Sir Alan MacLean? Ah, no, it is only the rambler, the idler who lives in Bolt Court, and who says, were he Laird of Inchkenneth, he would wall himself round with a fort. Next is the Three Kings. Three kings came riding from far away, Melchior and Gaspar and Balthasar. Three wise men out of the east were they, and they traveled by night and they slept by day, for their guide was a beautiful, wonderful star. The star was so beautiful, large and clear, that all the other stars of the sky became a white mist in the atmosphere, and by this they knew that the coming was near of the prince foretold in the prophecy. 3 caskets they bore on their saddle bows, 3 caskets of gold with golden keys. Their robes were of crimson silk with rows of bells and pomegranates and furbelows, their turbans like blossoming almond trees. And so the 3 kings rode into the west, through the dusk of night over hill and dell. And sometimes they nodded with beard on breast, and sometimes talked as they paused to rest with the people they met at some wayside well. Of the child that is born, said Balthasar, good people, I pray you tell us the news. For we in the east have seen his star, and have ridden fast and have ridden far, to find and worship the King of the Jews. And the people answered, you ask in vain. We know of no king but Herod the Great. They thought the wise men were men insane, as they spurred their horses across the plain, like riders in haste and who cannot wait. And when they came to Jerusalem, Herod the Great, who had heard this thing, sent for the wise men and questioned them, and said, go down unto Bethlehem, and bring me tidings of this new king. So they rode away, and the star stood still, the only one in the gray of morn. Yes, it stopped, it stood still of its own free will, right over Bethlehem on the hill, the city of David where Christ was born. And the 3 kings rode through the gate and the guard, through the silent street, till their horses turned and neighed as they entered the great inn-yard. But the windows were closed, and the doors were barred, and only a light in the stable burned. And cradled there in the scented hay, in the air made sweet by the breath of kine, the little child in the manger lay, the child that would be king one day, of a kingdom not human but divine. His mother, Mary of Nazareth, sat watching beside his place of rest, watching the even flow of his breath, for the joy of life and the terror of death were mingled together in her breath. They laid their offerings at his feet. The gold was their tribute to a king. The frankincense, with its odor sweet, was for the priest, the paraclete, the myrrh for the body's burying. And the mother wondered and bowed her head, and sat as still as a statue of stone. Her heart was troubled, yet comforted, remembering what the angel had said of an endless reign and of David's throne. Then the kings rode out of the city gate with a clatter of hoofs in proud array. But they went not back to Herod the Great, for they knew his malice and feared his hate, and returned to their homes by another way. Hello, Fubaka. Welcome back. I haven't seen you in a while. But I'm very happy to have you back. We are still reading Longfellow. He wrote an awful lot of poems. That was one of his many Christian-themed poems. I hope IRL stuff and work hasn't been too difficult. Yes, I'm doing great. Also, I have a lot of IRL stuff and a lot of work, but I still stream whenever I can because I find it very relaxing. That's good to hear. Alrighty, next up we have a poem called Song. Stay at home, my heart, and rest. Home-keeping hearts are happiest, for those that wander they know not where are full of trouble and full of care. To stay at home is best. Weary and homesick and distressed, they wander east, they wander west, and are baffled and beaten and blown about by the winds of the wilderness and of doubt. To stay at home is best. Then stay at home, my heart, and rest. The bird is safest in its nest, or all that flutter their wings and fly. A hawk is hovering in the sky. To stay at home is best. I'm not sure I agree with the sentiment in that poem, but I certainly understand it. Next up we have a poem called The White Tsar. The White Tsar is Peter the Great, Batyushka, Father Dear, and Gosudar, Sovereign, are titles the Russian people are fond of giving to the Tsar in their popular songs. Dost thou see, on the rampart's height, the wreath of mist in the light of the midnight moon? O hist, it is not a wreath of mist. It is the Tsar, the white Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. He has heard among the dead the artillery roll o'erhead, the drums and the tramp of feet of his soldiery in the street. He is awake, the white Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. He has heard in the grave the cries of his people, awake, arise. He has rent the gold brocade, whereof his shroud was made. He is risen, the white Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. From the Volga and the Don, he has led his armies on, over river and morass, over desert and mountain pass. The Tsar, the Orthodox Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. He looks from the mountain chain toward the seas that cleave in twain the continents. His hand points southward o'er the land of Romuli, O Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. And the words break from his lips. I am the builder of ships, and my ships shall sail these seas to the pillars of Heracles. I say it, the white Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. The Bosphorus shall be free, it shall make room for me, and the gates of its water streets be unbarred before my fleets. I say it, the white Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. And the Christian shall no more be crushed, as heretofore beneath thine iron rule, O Sultan of Istanbul. I swear it, I the Tsar, Batyushka, Gosudar. Next up, a very short little poem called Delia. Sweet as the tender fragrance that survives when martyred flowers breathe out their little lives. Sweet as a song that once consoled our pain, but never will be sung to us again, is thy remembrance. Now the hour of rest hath come to thee. Sleep, darling, it is best. Okay, that was the end, I think, of a book of poems called Birds of Passage. And now we're beginning a new book of his poems called Ultima Thule. And it starts with a poem called Bayard Taylor. Dead he lay among his books. The peace of God was in his looks. As the statues in the gloom watch o'er Maximilian's tomb, so these volumes from their shelves watched him, silent as themselves. Ah, his hand will nevermore turn their storied pages o'er. Nevermore his lips repeat songs of theirs, however sweet. Let the lifeless body rest. He is gone who was its guest. Gone as travelers haste to leave an inn, or tarry and to leave. Traveler, in what realms afar, in what planet, in what star, in what vast aerial space shines the light upon thy face? In what gardens of delight rest thy weary feet tonight? Poet thou, whose latest verse was a garland on thy hearse. Thou hast sung with organ tone in Deucalion's life thy own. On the ruins of the past blooms the perfect flower at last. Friend, but yesterday the bells rang for thee thy loud farewells, and today they toll for thee, lying dead beyond the sea. Lying dead among thy books, the peace of God in all thy looks. The chamber over the gate. Is it so far from thee thou canst no longer see? In the chamber over the gate, that old man desolate, weeping and wailing sore, for his son, who is no more. O Absalom, my son. Is it so long ago that cry of human woe from the walled city came, calling on his dear name, that it has died away in the distance of today? O Absalom, my son. There is no far or near. There is neither here nor there. There is neither soon nor late in that chamber over the gate, nor any long ago to that cry of human woe. O Absalom, my son. From the ages that are past, the voice sounds like a blast, over seas that wreck and drown, over tumult of traffic in town. And from ages yet to be come the echoes back to me. O Absalom, my son. Somewhere, at every hour, the watchman on the tower looks forth and sees the fleet approach of the hurrying feet of messengers that bear the tidings of despair. O Absalom, my son. He goes forth from the door who shall return no more. With him our joy departs. The light goes out in our hearts. In the chamber over the gate we sit, disconsolate. O Absalom, my son. That it is a common grief bringeth but slight relief. Ours is the bitterest loss. Ours is the heaviest cross. And forever the cry will be, would God I had died for they. O Absalom, my son. Next up we have a poem called From My Armchair, and it is dedicated to the children of Cambridge who presented to me on my 72nd birthday, February 27th, 1879. This chair, made from the wood of the village blacksmith's chestnut tree. Am I a king that I should call my own this splendid ebon throne? Or by what reason or what right divine can I proclaim it mine? Only perhaps by right divine of song it may to me belong, only because the spreading chestnut tree of old was sung by me. Well, I remember it in all its prime, when in the summer-time the affluent foliage of its branches made a cavern of cool shade. There, by the blacksmith's forge beside the street, its blossoms white and sweet enticed the bees until it seemed alive and murmured like a hive. And when the winds of autumn with a shout tossed its great arms about, the shining chestnuts, bursting from the sheath, dropped to the ground beneath. And now some fragments of its branches bare, shaped as a stately chair, have by my hearthstone found a home at last, and a whisper of the past. The Danish king could not, in all his pride, repel the ocean tide. But seated in this chair, I can, in rhyme, roll back the tide of time. I see again, as one in vision sees, the blossoms and the bees, and hear the children's voices shout and call, and the brown chestnuts fall. I see the smithy with its fires aglow. I hear the bellows blow, and the shrill hammers on the anvil beat, the iron white with heat. And thus, dear children, have ye made for me this day a jubilee, and to my more than 80 years and 10 brought back my youth again. The heart hath its own memory, like the mind, and in it are enshrined the precious keepsakes into which is wrought the giver's loving thought. Only your love and your remembrance could give life to this dead wood, and make these branches, leafless now so long, blossom again in song. That's kind of a neat one. I wonder why they chopped down that chestnut tree. Yeah. In his good poems, anyway, he paints a picture. Those are the kinds of poems that I like. I notice that sometimes Longfellow gets distracted telling a story rather than painting a picture. But when he's painting a picture, he does a very good job of it. Next up is a short poem called Jugurtha. How cold are thy baths, Apollo, cried the African monarch, the splendid, as down to his death in the hollow, dark dungeons of Rome he descended. Uncrowned, unthroned, unattended. How cold are thy baths, Apollo. How cold are thy baths, Apollo, cried the poet, unknown, unbefriended, as the vision that lured him to follow, with the mist and the darkness blended, and the dream of his life was ended. How cold are thy baths, Apollo. Next up is the iron pen. I thought this pen would arise from the casket where it lies, of itself would arise and write my thanks and my surprise. When you gave it me under the pines, I dreamed these gems from the mines of Siberia, Ceylon, and Maine would glimmer as thoughts in the lines. That this iron link from the chain of Bonnivard might retain some verse of the poet who sang of the prisoner and his pain. That this wood from the frigate's mast might write me a rhyme at last, as it used to write on the sky the song of the sea and the blast. But motionless as I wait, like a bishop lying in state, lies the pen with its mitre of gold and its jewels in violet. Then must I speak and say that the light of that summer day in the garden under the pines shall not fade and pass away. I shall see you standing there, caressed by the fragrant air, with the shadow on your face and the sunshine on your hair. I shall hear the sweet, low tone of a voice before unknown saying, "This is from me to you, from me and to you alone." And in words not idle and vain, I shall answer and thank you again for the gift and the grace of the gift, O beautiful Helen of Maine. And forever this gift will be as a blessing from you to me, as a drop of dew of your youth on the leaves of an aged tree. Next up we have a poem called Robert Burns. I see, amid the fields of air, a ploughman who, in foul and fair, sings at his task, so clear we know not if it is the laverick song we hear or his, nor care to ask. For him, the ploughing of those fields a more ethereal harvest yields than sheaves of grain. Songs flush with purple bloom the rye. The plover's call, the curlew's cry, sing in his brain. Touched by his hand, the wayside weed becomes a flower. The lowliest reed beside the stream is clothed with beauty. Gorse and grass and heather where his footsteps pass, the brighter seem. He sings of love, whose flame illumes the darkness of lone cottage rooms. He feels the force, the treacherous undertow and stress of wayward passions, and no less the keen remorse. At moments, wrestling with his fate, his voice is harsh but not with hate. The brushwood hung above the tavern door lets fall its bitter leaf, its drop of gall upon his tongue. But still the music of his song rises o'er all elate and strong. Its master chords are manhood, freedom, brotherhood. Its discords but an interlude between the words. And then to die so young and leave unfinished what he might achieve. Yet better sure in this than wandering up and down, an old man in a country town, infirm and poor. For now he haunts his native land. As an immortal youth his hand guides every plough. He sits beside each ingle nook. His voice is in each rushing brook, each rustling bough. His presence haunts this room tonight, a form of mingled mist and light from that far coast. Welcome beneath this roof of mine. Welcome, this vacant chair is thine, dear guest and ghost. Next up we have Helen of Tyre. What phantom is this that appears through the purple mist of the years, itself but a mist like these? A woman of cloud and of fire, it is she, it is Helen of Tyre, the town in the midst of the seas. O Tyre, in thy crowded streets, the phantom appears and retreats, and the Israelites that sell thy lilies and lions of brass look up as they see her pass, and murmur, Jezebel. Then another phantom is seen at her side in a gray gabardine, with a beard that floats to his waist. It is Simon Magus the seer. He speaks, and she pauses to hear the words he utters in haste. He says, from this evil fame, from this life of sorrow and shame, I will lift thee and make thee mine. Thou hast been Queen Candace and Helen of Troy, and shalt be the intelligence divine. O sweet as the breath of morn, to the fallen and forlorn are whispered words of praise. For the famished heart believes the falsehood that tempts and deceives, and the promise that betrays. So she follows from land to land, the wizard's beckoning hand, as a leaf is blown by the gust, till she vanishes into night. O reader, stoop down and write, with thy finger in the dust. O town in the midst of the seas, with thy rafts of cedar trees, thy merchandise and thy ships, thou too art become as naught, a phantom, a shadow, a thought, a name upon men's lips. Next up is Elegiac. Dark is the morning with mist in the narrow mouth of the harbor. Motionless lies the sea under its curtain of cloud. Dreamily glimmer the sails of ships on the distant horizon, like to the towers of a town built on the verge of the sea. Slowly and stately and still they sail forth into the ocean. With them sail my thoughts over the limitless deep, farther and farther away, borne on by unsatisfied longings, unto Hesperian isles, unto Ausonian shores. Now they have vanished away, have disappeared into the ocean. Sunk are the towers of the town into the depths of the sea. All have banished but those that, moored in neighboring roadstead, sailless at anchor ride, looming so large in the mist. Vanished too are the thoughts, the dim, unsatisfied longings. Sunk are the turrets of cloud into the ocean of dreams. While in a haven of rest, my heart is riding at anchor, held by the chains of love, held by the anchors of trust. Yeah, that one was nice. It was a non-rhyming poem, which is unusual for Longfellow. Next up we have Old St. David's at Radnor. What an image of peace and rest is this little church among its graves. All is so quiet, the troubled breast, the wounded spirit, the heart oppressed, here may find the repose it craves. See how the ivy climbs and expands over this humble hermitage, and seems to caress with its little hands the rough gray stones, as a child that stands caressing the wrinkled cheeks of age. You cross the threshold, and dim and small is the space that serves for the shepherd's fold. The narrow aisle, the bare white wall, the pews and the pulpit, quaint and tall, whisper and say, alas, we are old. Herbert's chapel at Bemerton, hardly more spacious, is than this. But poet and pastor blent in one, clothed with a splendor as of the sun, that lowly and holy edifice. It is not the wall of stone without that makes the building small or great, but the soul's light shining round about, and the faith that overcometh doubt, and the love that stronger is than hate. Were I a pilgrim in search of peace, were I a pastor of Holy Church, more than a bishop's diocese, should I prize this place of rest and release from farther longing and farther search. Here would I stay, and let the world with its distant thunder roar and roll. Storms do not rend the sail that is furled, nor like a dead leaf tossed and whirled in an eddy of wind is the anchored soul. Now we have a section with the heading Folk Songs. And that starts with a poem called The Sifting of Peter. I'm going to take a quick break first to hydrate. Okay, the sifting of Peter. In St. Luke's Gospel, we are told how Peter in the days of old was sifted, and now through ages intervene. Sin is the same while time and scene are shifted. Satan desires us great and small, as wheat, to sift us, and we all are tempted. Not one, however rich or great, is by his station or estate exempted. No house so safely guarded is, but he by some device of his can enter. No heart hath armor so complete, but he can pierce with arrows fleet its center. For all at last the cock will crow, who hear the warning voice but go unheeding, till thrice and more they have denied the man of sorrows, crucified and bleeding. One look of that pale, suffering face will make us feel the deep disgrace of weakness. We shall be sifted till the strength of self-conceit be changed at length to meekness. Wounds of the soul, though healed, will ache. The reddening scars remain and make confession. Lost innocence returns no more. We are not what we were before transgression. But noble souls through dust and heat rise from disaster and defeat the stronger. and conscious still of the divine. Within them lie on earth supine, no longer. Next up, we have a poem called Maiden and Weathercock. Maiden, O weathercock on the village spire, with your golden feathers all on fire, tell me, what can you see from your perch above there over the tower of the church? I can see the roofs and the streets below, and the people moving to and fro, and beyond, without either roof or street, the great salt sea and the fisherman's fleet. I can see a ship come sailing in beyond the headlands and harbor of Lynn, and a young man standing on the deck with a silken kerchief round his neck. Now he is pressing it to his lips, and now he is kissing his fingertips, and now he is lifting and waving his hand and blowing the kisses toward the land. Ah, that is the ship from over the sea that is bringing my lover back to me, bringing my lover so fond and true, who does not change with the wind like you. If I change with all the winds that blow, it is only because they made me so, and people would think it wondrous, strange, if I, a weathercock, should not change. O pretty maiden so fine and fair, with your dreamy eyes and your golden hair, when you and your lover meet today, you will thank me for looking some other way. That was kind of a clever and cute little poem that I sort of screwed up, a bit scuffed there. Next up we have a poem called The Windmill. Behold, a giant am I. Aloft here in my tower, with my granite jaws I devour the maize and the wheat and the rye, and grind them into flour. I look down over the farms. In the fields of grain I see the harvest that is to be, and I fling to the air my arms, for I know it is all for me. I hear the sound of flails, far off from the threshing floors, in barns with their open doors, and the wind in my sails louder and louder roars. I stand here in my place, with my foot on the rock below, and whichever way it may blow, I meet it face to face, as a brave man meets his foe. And while we wrestle and strive, my master the miller stands and feeds me with his hands, for he knows who makes him thrive, who makes him lord of the lands. On Sundays I take my rest. Church-going bells begin their low, melodious din. I cross my arms on my breast, and all is peace within. Next up is the tide rises, the tide falls. The tide rises, the tide falls. The twilight darkens, the curlew calls. Along the sea sands damp and brown, the traveler hastens toward the town. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Darkness settles on roofs and walls, but the sea in the darkness calls and calls. The little waves with their soft white hands efface the footprints in the sands. And the tide rises, the tide falls. The morning breaks, the steeds in their stalls stamp and neigh as the hostler calls. The day returns, but nevermore returns the traveler to the shore. And the tide rises, the tide falls. Okay. Now it looks like we are starting a series of sonnets. And the first sonnet is called My Cathedral. Like two cathedral towers, these stately pines uplift their fretted summits tipped with cones. The arch beneath them is not built with stones. Not art, but nature traced those lovely lines and carved this graceful arabesque of vines. No organ but the wind here sighs and moans. No sepulchre conceals a martyr's bones. No marble bishop on his tomb reclines. Enter the pavement, carpeted with leaves, gives back a softened echo to thy tread. Listen, the choir is singing, all the birds, in leafy galleries beneath the eaves, are singing. Listen, ere the sound be fled, and learn there may be worship without words. Next up is the burial of the poet Richard Henry Dana. In the old churchyard of his native town, and in the ancestral tomb beside the wall, we laid him in the sleep that comes to all, and left him to his rest and his renown. The snow was falling, as if heaven dropped down white flowers of paradise to strew his pall. The dead around him seemed to wake and call his name as worthy of so white a crown. And now the moon is shining on the scene, and the broad sheet of snow is written o'er, with shadows cruciform of leafless trees, as once the winding sheet of Saladin, with chapters of the Koran, but more mysterious and triumphant signs are these. So, the next poem is called Night. Into the darkness and the hush of night, Slowly the landscape sinks and fades away. And with it fade the phantoms of the day, the ghosts of men and things that haunt the light. The crowd, the clamor, the pursuit, the flight, the unprofitable splendor and display, the agitations and the cares that prey upon our hearts, all vanish out of sight. The better life begins. The world no more molests us. All its records we erase from the dull, commonplace book of our lives, that like a palimpsest is written o'er with trivial incidents of time and place. And lo, the ideal, hidden beneath, revives. That's a particularly good night, I would say. A night where all of your worries of the day vanish. That's an elusive sort of night for many of us. Next up we have L'Envoi, the poet, and his songs. As the birds come in the spring, we know not from where. As the stars come at evening, from depths of the air. As the rain comes from the cloud, and the brook from the ground. As suddenly, low or loud, out of silence, a sound. As the grape comes to the vine, the fruit to the tree, as the wind comes to the pine, and the tide to the sea. As come the white sails of ships o'er the ocean's verge, as comes the smile to the lips, the foam to the surge. So come the poet to his songs, all hitherward blown from the misty realm that belongs to the vast unknown. His and not his are the lays he sings in their fame, is his and not his, and the praise and the pride of a name. For voices pursue him by day and haunt him by night, and he listens and needs must obey when the angel says, "Write." Next up, we have In the Harbor, Be Calmed. Be calmed upon the sea of thought, still unattained the land it sought. My mind, with loosely hanging sails, lies waiting the auspicious gales. On either side, behind, before, the ocean stretches like a floor, a level floor of amethyst, crowned by a golden dome of mist. Blow, breath of inspiration, blow, shake and uplift this golden glow, and fill the canvas of the mind with wafts of thy celestial wind. Blow breath of song until I feel the straining sail, the lifting keel, the life of the awakening sea, its motion and its mystery. I think I could finish this little series of poems, but honestly, I'm not doing them justice. So I think I'll call it quits there until next time. Next time I think will be in just a couple of days. I will do another stream at around this same time on Thursday. And then unfortunately I'm out of town over the weekend, so I won't be doing my normal weekend streams. Thank you, Fubaka, for being with me all this time during this stream. I hope you enjoyed your time here. And I hope you found it relaxing. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your day.